folks, and welcome back to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. We're joined again today by our guests Drew and Ellie Holcomb, the husband and wife Americana duo from right here in Nashville, Tennessee, good friends of Typology. Today we get the second half, part 2 with Drew and Ellie. We're going to pick back up on where we left off from last week's conversation from part 1. And make sure you stick around to the end. Last week, we had Ellie finish off the podcast with a song. And at the end of this show, Drew will be singing the new release from Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors. So stick around and make sure you catch that. Hey, I want to invite you to follow us on our socials. You can follow Ian on his Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Ian Morgan Cron. And you can follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Typology Podcast. That's TYPOLOGY Podcasts. Also, if you like the show, please go to iTunes and leave us a review. That really helps other people find the show, and it goes a long way for us. We really, really appreciate that. All right, let's get on with part 2 of our interview with Drew and Ellie Holcomb. And now, here is the host of our show, Ian Cron.
All right, Drew. Ellie put herself out there. Now, I'm going to ask you to do the same. You're an 8. You're in therapy. So for me, with 8s in therapy, there can be similar challenges to a 7, but it's a different kind of intensity, right?
Yeah.
Usually for an 8 to get in the room, someone's had to wallop them a little bit. You know,
for sure.
For them to be able to say, I'm going to reach out beyond myself. I'm going to be willing to self-reflect. Because vulnerability is not your first language. Right?
Yeah.
What brought you there? What are you working on as an 8? What's happening?
Well, I mean, there's sort of the long answer is that I sort of started a journey of self-reflection when I was about 21. I had a brother that died when I was 17, and I responded to that with a kind of classic, let me give you 10 reasons why his life was awesome and worth living, and give you the high points of his obituary and make sense of it through that sort of means, but not actually like allow myself to miss him. So my senior year of college, I was in this program at University of Tennessee where you can kind of build your own major. And so I did a project where I did 100 interviews of people who knew him and trying to dive into why his life was important to them. Doctors, friends, because he had 2,000 people that came to his funeral. He was a very magnanimous young kid in town. And so in doing that, I was really dove into my own sadness and grief. And so I became very acquainted with grief and became acquainted with allowing myself to sort of feel deeply and sadly and then also rise out of that. And I also have a 7 wing, so I love fun. I love people. I love doing things. And so kind of how Ellie and I even got together was we both just loved sort of had this big sense of adventure. She would casually say something in college like, man, that'd be fun to go do that. And the next thing you know, I'd already planned it, So it's
That's great.
That's sort of one of the benefits of being an 8 is just a can-do spirit, So there were a variety of reasons I went to counseling over the years that were sort of the mild, I want to fix this or deal with this. But really, I got really sick about 3 years ago. I got meningitis and spent 9 days in the hospital.
Oh.
And coming out of that, I was really, I couldn't really get better. I couldn't feel better. And I really had, I don't know if, I was it wasn't PTSD, but it was very much I just couldn't function the way I was used to functioning. And so I went to a counselor and I couldn't express to anyone I was close to how scary it was to feel like you're going to die. And I really, in the hospital, thought I was going to die multiple days.
And you could have.
I could have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was afraid to, my buddies were like, oh man, that was crazy how sick you were. It's like, yeah, it was really crazy, And then I didn't feel like I could necessarily express it to Ellie because I didn't want her to try to make it better, which is sort of a tendency of a sort of a big personality, at least that was my fear. Right. Obviously it's not exactly true. So I started going to counseling and was able to sort of dive down into that, and then out of that went through a sort of a professional desert right after that sort of burned all the furniture in my room, internally,
Right.
and gave me just like a significant identity crisis. And so I had heard of this guy who's also an 8, who's a counselor, and I was like, that's what I need. I need a good butt kicking. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need another counselor just to go, wow, that's good. I need somebody to like get in my face. And that's what has happened. And it's been really good. And so I think for me, part of it was having kids. I just wanted to be a dad that, like led them well, but also, gave them plenty of space. Our firstborn is a daughter. And so she opened up these new rooms in my heart that, were not there before. I mean, when she was a newborn, I was like, I was playing with her on the floor, and I like made the baby voice and called her Pumpkin. And Ellie literally goes, "What? Did you just say Pumpkin?" And I was like, "I'll say whatever I want to my daughter." Because like that would not have been a word I would have used. Like I'm a very man's man, like Pumpkin, what? But it's like this funny thing we look back on. And so, man, our middle son is, he's just this sweet, sensitive kid. He's all boy, but he's just different than me. And I want to be like, I don't want to, 8s tend to, I think, sort of see the world a certain way and want everyone to sort of, that's why they make great dictators, or they make dictators. I don't know if there's a such thing as a great dictator, but, I try to be more of like a benevolent monarch, sort of, that's how
Good of you.
Yeah.
Very good of you.
Well, it's funny. Like I've had this band now for 14 years, and 2 of the guys that have been in the band now for 14 plus years with me, and we joke that's kind of how the band operates. It's like somebody has to make the decisions. I'm okay with making decisions, but I want to be wise that there are plenty of things I'm not the expert on, and they are, and so I need to listen and default to them as often as possible. And obviously, marriage is different than that. I'm not a monarch in the marriage. We're equal, and I really have loved the sort of the journey that we've had of Ellie really coming into her own, and even her deciding to choose to do her career, which was a huge step of scariness for her and fear. And she's done really well and really climbed a lot of mountains. And to be a cheerleader, I think that one of the hardest things for 8s to do is to let others be in charge. Because you always think you're the best person in the room to be in charge, which I don't know what that is. It's a really sick and demented point of view in some ways, but it also tends to somewhat usually be true, because you have this capacity to go in and like make things happen. You can go in like not scared ever of chaos. It's like, I will show you how we'll get through this chaos. But sometimes now it's like, hey, this is not my chaos. I'm in it. But it's not mine. It's not mine to fix. I'm just going to help the other person navigate their way through it. But I'm not, I don't have to be in charge here. And
so let me just pause 1 second. 'Cause that's a huge revelation for an 8.
Yeah.
Huge.
The realization that I don't have to be in charge here. I mean, I think part of what you're describing there is that softening of a strategy, right? So if the strategy of the 8 is, I am going to assert strength and power and control over the environment, so that neither I nor anybody else will see my weakness and vulnerability.
Right.
I will be in charge here. And so what appears to be strength is actually being fueled by insecurity and anxiety.
For sure.
From a child's perspective, right?
Yeah.
So it's a powerful testimony to your own growth that you're able to say that.
Yeah.
And actually execute on it. Like,
yeah.
This is not my chaos to fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed, one of the things that's so interesting about the Enneagram in general is I've enjoyed trying to challenge people, because I'm a challenger. When I see someone say, well, I'm this and I do that, and that's how it is. And I'm like, well, that's actually not the point of the Enneagram, is not to just like know yourself and just use it as an excuse to be a certain way. Like as an 8, it's like, well, I just have a bad temper. Well, you don't get to yell at your kids just because you're an 8.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's not a hall pass.
And so we were on this cruise. Ellie was playing music on this cruise, and this what's the guy's name? Do you remember?
Hunter.
Hunter, yeah, was doing this.
Oh, this was with Amy.
You with Amy? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
He told this great story about the Enneagram, and I can't remember exactly the details, but basically he said there was this village in Vietnam, and they had this huge clay Buddha statue in the middle, and it had been there for generations, and they, always thought this was the clay statue. And so one year, this bolt of lightning strikes the statue, and boom, all the clay falls off, and there's actually a gold Buddha statue underneath it. When they do the research and find out that the gold Buddha had actually been there, for 90 years before that, and they covered it in clay because there was this war with a neighboring tribe, and they didn't want the neighboring tribe to steal the gold Buddha. And his point was that the Enneagram is the clay. It's how we survive the world. It's the personality that we are, whether it's nature or nurture, and I'm not sure all the details. I haven't dived into it that much, but we have a tendency to sort of use the number as a way to say, this is who I am, and you can't get in unless you kind of play by my rules. When it's a whole lot better to say okay, I have these tendencies, I have these strategies, and there's a lot of, if I stick to them, then there's a lot of people that get run over in the process. And instead, I want to grow out of it. I want to learn to move in health to or when I'm insecure, I go to 5, learning these things about yourself, so that, because one of the classic things about me as an 8 is that I honestly could care very little, almost zero, what other people think about me, which is not a great way to go through life. Not that you want people's approval, but it's important for you not to just go through life and get your way and run over people in the process, So learning to sort of invite more and more people into my work, our parenting, our friendships, all these sort of things, having the self-awareness to know that that's not my tendency, but it's actually really good when I do that, has made life a lot, it's made me less fearful of life and have to have strategies to cope, because I'm less afraid of being out of control and not being in charge and not knowing what tomorrow looks like, because I can't control it anyways. So might as well just sort of be a little more okay with whatever it is.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Merton would have said that outer sort of encrusted self would be the false self.
Yeah.
Right. And we want to live into our true self.
Right.
That divine spark is what he would have used as the word. We can use gold or whatever. And how do we, and you're describing it, move from a place of living in spiritual unconsciousness, right? Living a non-conscious life, right? Where we're just, surviving, not living, and but where we're not awake.
Yeah.
Right.
And really, we should be awake for this life. It seems very obvious to me that if there's a lot of headache down here to get through. You might as well go through it awake. And what I mean by sort of living with conscious intentionality, which you're describing, which is, you're doing enough self-reflection, you've had enough pain in your life, you're like, you really should not be the kind of person who goes through life who's always in control and always, steamrolling people to get your way, whatever. To be able to invite people in and to be more vulnerable, to reveal one's, to bare one's throat, like wolves do when they want to end a fight.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great one. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And so you literally now have a growth path, right? And the growth path is, how do I defrost? How do I recover? And I would say for 8s, how do I recover my innocence? Oftentimes 8s will report that, early in childhood, something happened, or that real or perceived, that led them to the conclusion that we live in a might makes right world, and I got to grow up faster than other people do and pony up, and, and out of that, of course, nature and nurture is part of it, right? So, we can't discount those factors, but, and then moving out into the world, though, and I would define innocence as open-heartedness without cynicism.
Wow.
And that's what you're doing with your daughter.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
Open-heartedness without cynicism. 8 fathers, I see this all the time. It's like with their daughters, that's where they feel safe to be open-hearted without cynicism.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And if you can bring that out into the world beyond her to other adults.
Yeah.
Now, please don't call me Pumpkin, but you get the idea, right?
Ian Pumpkin,
baby.
Pumpkin.
But it's like leading. How do we all learn how to lead with the heart. You know, how do we all learn just to lead with the heart? Which takes great courage, because it will get broken. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
No way to get around it. You know?
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, I just, I feel like kind of astonished that I'm saying this, but it's so often for me has been the breaking, has been the pain that I just couldn't ignore anymore.
Yes.
That has like broken me free of some of that unconsciousness. And so, I'm always surprised to say that I'm grateful for pain because it just is like anti my nature. Don't worry. I still try to avoid it all the time. But I have learned enough times that, that just life in general is painful.
Yes.
It will be. We all know what it is to suffer on one level or another.
Right. And what you just said is powerful for an 8, which is that this is how it is. Yeah. And this is the way life works. And that word suffer, and I've said this before, but it's always worth repeating, derives from a Latin word that means to allow. And so when 7s allow suffering, and rather than, sometimes when I'm around a 7 who's not awake, who's asleep, right, going through life in a state of sort of spiritual unconscious, I feel like they're running and looking over their shoulder. And sometimes I've said to a 7 before, who's chasing you? What is behind you? Like, what are you looking over your shoulder at? And it's like, because whatever that is, you have to turn around and run at it.
Yeah.
Because you eventually will not be able to outrun whatever that thing is.
It's going to get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I know.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Or you will end up Peter Pan.
Right.
You will end up being the person who never grew up.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, the danger for 7s is that they don't turn and face what's chasing them.
Yeah.
I think with question I have for 7s, I'll ask it to you, and then we're going to get to a song from you guys too, so I want to make sure we leave some time for that.
Yeah.
You have a single that just dropped today.
Yeah, that's right.
So like 30 minutes ago you told me. So
I did, yeah.
What's the name of that single?
The song's called Family. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I think by the time, this is, in about 3 weeks, we have another song, which is the title track called Dragons, which I think is probably the one we'll play because it's a good song about the heart. Yeah.
All right, Drew, I'm going to come back in just a second, and I got a question for you, and that I'm excited to ask. But first, let me tell folks about our sponsor, Anthony.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
One of the lessons I've learned, Anthony,
Tell me.
is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute hour.
No, they do
even
not.
from the typical weekly sessions. And this is why some people, even though they may have a great therapist, can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for months or even years.
Sometimes we need more.
That's right, because some folks, they never really get anywhere if they're just going on a weekly basis. They don't make any progress.
That's right.
So this is why I'm such a fan and a believer in the intense counseling process at Restoring the Soul.
Yes.
In Colorado. Restoring the Soul was created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Michael and his team know that sometimes you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough. For nearly 20 years, they've helped couples and individuals transform their relationships and their lives. So, my friends, if you are looking to get out of the rut you are in, but you can't wait months or years, you can call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation. That number is, Anthony,
303-932-9777.
I have that number run through my head. I think it's now to the point where I use it as my Social Security number. I swear to gosh,
Tell us what they get.
Well, first, if they call that number, they can learn how they can, they get a free consultation about an intensive counseling process that can jumpstart their journey.
The man himself picks up the phone.
That's right, with Michael Cusick. And as a special bonus for Typology listeners, they can go to www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called
5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationship.
That's good.
Come on.
Come on, bring it. All right, man. So here's a question that my AA sponsor asked me the other day, and it absolutely nailed me to the wall. I was actually describing to him a situation I was facing, and I was like, you call your sponsor when you're like freaking out, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like whenever you're disturbed, and you need to be reminded that you're not in charge, and maybe you ought to rely on your higher power to figure this stuff out, And the question that he asked me is, what would you do if you weren't afraid?
Oh man.
Is that not? This has become my question whenever I get disturbed or I get like freaked out about life. I got to make a decision. I ask myself now, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And
so
oftentimes
good.
it's like, that's the answer, right?
Is that's what you should do? Yeah.
So right now in your life, I don't know what it is that's, going on.
Yeah.
But you are in the fear triad.
Oh. Don't I know it? I have a 6-wing, so then that's
my gosh!
I'm like,
Yeah, insult to
I feel
injury.
I feel like a schizophrenic. I'm like, let's go do this, and I'm like, no, that's gonna be terrible. I mean, it is insane.
Every 10 minutes,
I
both
feel
ends.
like a crazy person. I'm like, it's gonna be the best ever, but what if it's not?
That is great.
So what would life be like if you weren't afraid?
Oh man.
And what would you do if you weren't afraid?
I love this. We had this conversation. We had a kind of similar conversation 2 nights ago on the couch. But I think that I would be okay to need things, like to ask for what I need. I'm really still not good at that. And I'm actually not even good at acknowledging. I don't even know what I need half the time.
Right.
And so I would be okay with being needy and for asking for what it is that I need. So we're gonna have to do some work on that.
Yeah.
But and a lot of what I need to do, which is this is gonna sound crazy, is play. Like I need to let myself play. I have 3 young kids, so there's a lot of like demands, and I'm working, and so like my margin for like time to myself is
Right.
pretty much non-existent right now. And so it is a really but I actually really need to play and to rest, to even be able to do the work that I do. And so it was this amazing thing happened yesterday. I had a co-write that got canceled, and I have a deadline on a kid's book that I'm writing, and which is so fun, but it is a deadline, and so it's kind of needs some things need to move forward with that.
Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Gosh.
It's not exactly a creativity inspiring
Right,
word.
You have a deadline.
Yeah, you're literally like, what? No.
Can we just call it Happy Day?
Yeah,
Can we call it
Happy
Be
Day.
inspired,
A
but do it by
celebration.
April, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the deadline.
Yeah, I need a lifeline is what I need. But I really had a lot of things that I could have been doing, but Drew and I had this conversation. He was like, I think, like, he was kind of like, I dare you. I was like, I just can't imagine taking time for myself right now. I just like it does not fit in the schedule.
I said, I dare you to
I was
imagine.
like, I dare you to imagine it. And so it was such a freeing thing for me because somebody else had a boundary. They're like, I really want to write with you. I feel terrible. I want to keep my word, but I cannot do it today. And because they drew that boundary, I was like, I'm going to the lake. I literally turned the car around and drove to the lake and got on a boat. And it was amazing to just allow myself to be like, I need to go have some space where I'm quiet and I'm in the sun. And that's okay. Like and y'all, I mean, I feel like I came alive.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And then I felt like I did everything else better because I played a little bit. And that feels weird for 7 to say that it's hard to play. But the season of life I'm in right now is I am maxed out.
You know, that's a really good distinction, and we'll do this on another show maybe, because I have a son who's a 7, and just, dear friends who are 7s. I'm not so sure 7s actually do know how to play. I think they know how to manically
Desire it.
or plan it, think about it, And yet there's a desperation sometimes in an unconscious 7. It's desperate fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's not real. It's not a bubbly, gurgly joy. It's this kind of constricted, I will have fun. You know what I mean?
And not present too.
Totally.
And
Yeah,
not present
always
to
looking
it.
toward the next. Yeah.
Not present
next
to
thing.
it. You
Yep.
know, that's what's so beautiful about children, right? Is they have such a sort of a non-relationship with time. You know what I mean? It's like, well, this is what we got. You know, they're not haven't lived long enough to
good.
regret what's in the past and think about it, and they haven't lived long enough to worry about the future
That's
because
so
someone's
good.
got it covered. So it's like, well, so all I got to worry about right now is now, and that's pretty
Right.
good.
That is good.
It's
You
really
know, that's
good.
pretty good. You know, well, you know, guys, what I loved about this show is I wasn't sure what to expect. We don't know each other. I've
Right.
seen you perform, Ellie. I've seen you perform. Actually, I did a co-write one day with somebody, and then they said, "Hey, come to this show I'm doing tonight at the Franklin Theater."
Oh,
And
great.
I'm pretty sure that you were on the. I know you were on the bill that night. There was like 4 or 5 writers.
Yeah.
I think maybe Tommy Sims was that the night, or Marcus Hammond?
Marcus, yeah.
So I had
was
written
there.
that day with
Yeah.
Marcus,
Yeah.
and then you all were on stage that night.
I
I'd never
love
seen you
that.
perform before,
I love that.
and so I don't know you guys, and I was thinking 7 with 8. Well, that's gonna be sparky. And I thought to myself, I hope they've done some work because it, you know, and
This
you.
could get awkward if they have
Well,
it.
you know, it could just be. It would be. You know what it would be? It'd be entertaining, but it may not be deep.
Yeah.
And what this was both. What I
Yeah.
really picked up in the two of you, going back to Nietzsche's quote, is that the two of you don't just have a marriage, you have a great friendship, and that you are with conscious intentionality. You are intending to live awake in the world. That's clear because of the. You're not just talking about the Enneagram. It's like this is what, you know. It's like, nope, I'm going to follow a path. You know, I'm going to follow a path toward finding that gold self.
Yeah.
You know, the gold of the self that we contain.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, golly, I keep, you know, I spend so much time trying to, you know, when I meet with people and to try and convince them they're beautiful. It's like, this shouldn't be that hard. They spend their whole time arguing with me about, you know, well,
Their
I got this
value
problem
and
and I've
yeah.
got this problem and I've got that problem. You know, it's like, wow, what if we just turned that all upside down and just tapped into the resources of your goodness? You know, and instead of pathologizing yourself up and down, you know, like you're not a problem that needs to be solved. You're you're a beautiful creature that needs to be realized.
embraced,
And realized, you know, brought to the surface. So, and you're doing that with each other and you're doing it individually. And I do love that one of the messages I'm hearing is you're not a fused couple. That's when I know something is really off, is when I meet a couple that's merged and fused at the hip. And that means that neither one has an identity.
Yeah.
That the sum of the two of them is the identity, and that's unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
They're blurry. But what actually is a healthy relationship in my mind is two people committed to becoming fully themselves and separate from each other
Yeah.
so that they can come together.
Yeah.
You can't come together if you're not
good.
separate
Yeah.
and
That is so
individuated,
great.
you know? And I feel that separation between the two of you, that healthy gap between the two of you, that creates the opportunity for you to meet each other as separate people who have chosen communion, not fusion. You know? So that's beautiful. And on that incredibly wise and smart note, I want to move to the actual sort of great moment of the show. I want to hear a song. And I want to hear something from the new record. What do we got?
It's called Dragons. This is a song about grandfathers and ghosts and war and dragons.
Wow. I can't wait.
You want a guitar?
Yeah.
Which one?
I'll use that one over there if that's all right.
There's some good ones in this room.
That's right. Here in the Typology Studios, we have lots of guitars.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Okay, folks, here we go. Drew and Ellie Holcomb with Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors' brand new single, Dragons. Take it away, brother.
All right. Ready?
I was climbing a mountain asleep in the moonlight. The ghost of my grandpa came to me in a dream. As the stars hung above us, he started singing this chorus. He laughed loud as heaven and said this to me. Take a few chances, a few worthy romances. Go swimming in the ocean on New Year's Day. Don't listen to the critics, stand up and bear witness. Go slay all the dragons that stand in your way. We stayed up and talked until the sunrise, of war and love and sorrow. He said, stop spending all your money on forgiveness of sins. Today is all you're promised. Don't trouble with tomorrow. He faded into the forest, proudly singing this hymn. Take a few chances, a few worthy romances. Go swimming in the ocean on New Year's Day. Don't listen to the critics, stand up and bear witness. Go slay all the dragons that stand in your way. Woke up in a fever, surrounded by lightning. All my windows were open, and I let the rain flood in. The past felt like present, the future uncertain. But I sang like a sparrow, lost in the wind. Take a few chances, a few worthy romances. Go swimming in the ocean on New Year's Day. Don't listen to the critics, stand up and bear witness. Go slay all the dragons that stand in your way. Go slay all the dragons that stand in your way. Go slay all the dragons that stand in your way.
Well, on that note, typology listeners, go out there and slay all your dragons. Be sure to pick up Drew Holcomb's new record. What's the name of the record, brother?
Dragons.
Dragons.
Yeah.
What a fine name.
Yeah.
Ellie, what's your latest project? What do you want people to know about?
I think my latest one is my kids' record that came out with my book called Sing.
All right, everybody. You need to go out there and get a copy of Sing. Get yourself a copy of Dragons.
Yeah.
And then also remember the words of the great Oscar Wilde. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. Until next time, folks.
Yes.